We've already had a look at the idea of time travel and the possibility of it existing. Many of you have requested a sequel to that video since it came out, so I've decided to finally revisit this topic. Now, this video won't be made in the same way as the original was made, as in the first part we looked at video evidence which was both hard to come by and, in some cases, unrealistic. This time we'll have a look at pictures, theories backed with evidence, and people who have claimed they have time traveled. As always when it comes to this series, I'm not saying these are real or fake, and it's completely up to you as to whether you would like to believe these apparent pieces of evidence or not. But without further ado, sit back, relax, and join me for the second part of 10 time travelers that may have been caught on tape. Number 1 is the surfer. This first piece of apparent evidence might not be too convincing, and there is a chance that it can easily be dismissed, but so far that hasn't happened, and it appears as if people are slightly confused about this incident. In 1976, author Lester Ray Peterson released a book known as the Cape Scott Story, which featured a series of pictures showing the history of an island known as Cape Scott, which is in Vancouver Island, British Columbia. The book appears to be normal enough, apart from one picture which left many people confused. This picture was taken in 1917 and shows a group of people, all wearing clothes that fit the time they're in, except for a man who appears to be much more modern than the rest. I mean, this guy almost looks like a modern day surfer. Not only this, but the men around him look at him as if he is indeed not supposed to be there, as if he's foreign to the lands that he's in. Now, a few theorists took this and said it was proof of a time traveler, while others were understandably skeptical. However, nobody has been able to identify the man, which is definitely strange, seeing as how much conversation this picture has sparked. Number 2 is advanced transport. There are a few cases of advanced technology existing in time periods where they really shouldn't, and this is an interesting case. Although it doesn't show any physical technology, it shows pictures that were carved into walls over 3,000 years ago that appear to show modern pieces of transport. It shows images that look like a blimp, a helicopter, and a plane. Obviously, these vehicles did not exist 3,000 years ago, so many people have speculated as to where these carvings came from. Most people believe it's just a randomly carved image or an image that came to be over time. Except it is strange that they all resemble modern day vehicles and they are all right beside each other. With this in mind, it's not surprising that certain people stated that this proved someone traveled back in time and taught the ancient Egyptians about modern transport systems. If this apparent time traveler's intention was to advance transport by a few thousand years, it failed, as these devices were only made in the last couple hundred years. However, we can't really say who is correct on the matter of whether it's real or fake, as the conversation is currently based on speculation and hearsay. Number 3 is John Teeter. John Teeter was an alias that posted on several bulletin boards between 2000 and 2001. This person claimed to be a military time traveler from the year 2036 who traveled to 1975 to get an IBM 5100 portable computer. He showed pictures of his apparent time traveling device along with a manual and several other bits of proof that had people fairly convinced this was legitimate. He went on to make several predictions as to what will happen in the future, some of which were vague and some were quite specific. A lot of these did not end up coming true, with the main ones being that World War III would occur in 2015 and kill 3 billion people. This made his claim a lot less convincing. However, he also said that because he traveled back in time, a shift may occur that would stop these events from happening. While his stories had a lot of holes in it, he did put a lot of effort into something most people consider to be a troll. He gave very detailed answers for almost every question he was asked, leading to quite a large archive of predictions and general statements. In March of 2001, he made a post saying that he would be leaving this timeline to return to the future, and he proceeded to stop posting on any of the forums he had previously been active on. His story is definitely interesting, but filled with contradictions. However, I recommend taking a look into some of his predictions for yourself, because they are quite intriguing. Number 4 is the ALTAI mummy. In 2016, archaeologists were exploring an area in the ALTAI mountains when they dug up the corpse of a woman who had been buried there for 1,500 years. It was at an altitude of almost 3,000 meters and was a fantastic find for the excavation team. However, something very interesting was found on the person in question. They were wearing a pair of shoes that appeared to be quite modern. While the people who lived in the ALTAI mountains were considered to be very skilled craftsmen, a pair of shoes like this would be essentially unheard of. What's more interesting is the fact that these shoes had stood the test of time and were in a reasonable condition, whilst almost everything else that was found had withered away or degraded. These shoes don't necessarily mean that the person buried was some kind of a time traveler, but quite a few people proposed that theory. It's also intriguing that the corpse was buried so deep in the ground. This may have been the result of earthquakes or landslides in that area. However, people have suggested that it was an attempt to hide the possible time traveler. Number 5 is the HIPSTER time traveler. The HIPSTER time traveler is a person who was caught in a picture that went viral on the internet because of its seemingly unexplainable nature. The picture was taken in 1941 and has been confirmed to be authentic. It shows a crowd of people forming for the reopening of the South Fork Bridge in British Columbia. What's interesting about this photo is the man in the center of it. While everybody else is wearing clothes that appear to fit the style of the early 1940s, this man appears to be much more modern. What's more is his camera, which people claim is more modern than any camera available at that time. A large conversation began about whether or not this picture showed a genuine time traveler or just a person dressed differently than everybody else. It was later revealed that most of the things he was wearing were available at the time and that the camera he was using was also available. However, this style was fairly ahead of its time. Not many people in the early 40s would wear this combination of clothes. While it is more likely that it's just a coincidence, it is an interesting picture nonetheless. Number 6 is the Philadelphia experiment. The Philadelphia experiment was an alleged military experiment that may have occurred in 1943 during World War II. The premise behind it was slightly ridiculous and many people believed it was a hoax. It was said that the US Navy destroyer was rendered invisible to enemy devices for a short amount of time. The idea that this occurred spawned from a man who claimed to have been a part of the American military and apparently took part in this experiment. He explained it more as a scientific endeavor as opposed to any form of magic, stating that they essentially used a series of light tricks to make the ship impossible to detect. The idea was dismissed but was quite popular, to the extent that a loosely based movie adaptation was made in 1984 that explored the idea that time travel was involved. It was fiction, of course, but in 1990 a man named Alfred Bielek claimed that he was a part of the experiment and that the movie's adaptation was actually quite accurate as to what happened. Many people were of course skeptical of Bielek's claim, but the US military were very experimental during World War II, so a few people did actually believe this was the case. There were a few more bits of potential evidence to back this up, however it was largely deemed to be a hoax. Number 7 is Rudolf Fens. Rudolf Fens was an apparent time traveler who reportedly disappeared sometime in the 1870s and then reappeared in Times Square, New York in 1951 wearing similar clothes. He was fatally hit by a taxi and some strange things were found on his body. It's said that there was a letter from 1876, business cards with his name on it, around $70 in old banknotes and more. It was also said that none of the objects showed any signs of aging. A short story written in 1952 details the same story, and it's said that people took this tale and attempted to sell it as a real event. However, other people say that this legend was around before the release of this story and that the piece was based off that. A few magazines and authors released the story as factual, which popularized it as an actual event. Many people believe Rudolf Fens somehow traveled from the 1870s to the 1950s. They also believe he did not do it intentionally, as he was disoriented and confused before being hit by the taxi. I recommend looking at both the short story and the various articles revolving around this event and coming to your own conclusion, as they make for a pretty good read. Number 8 is ancient technology. This one has little to do with an actual person, but many people believe that this one is one of the most convincing arguments of possible time travel, and that is ancient technology. All around the world, there's bits and pieces of technology, inventions, and structures that suggest those areas were much more advanced than we originally thought. For example, in Peru, there is a city called Sacsayhuaman that was built so long ago that nobody really knows the exact timeline. Some people believed it was built in the 15th century, and some people think it was built before that. Either way, the structure that is the city is actually quite phenomenal. It was built out of massive stones that even modern machinery would have trouble lifting. It's also very well designed, leading people to believe that they had some kind of a modern technique to building it. Other examples include a prehistoric object that looked like a battery that was discovered in Baghdad in the 1930s. The object is said to be over 2,000 years old, even though the first model of a battery wasn't made until 1799. If it is a battery, this would prove that certain civilizations were miles ahead of others. This led certain people to believe that some kind of time travel was involved, as if a person had traveled back in time to give these people the technology necessary to make these inventions. It's an interesting theory, although there are a few holes in it, like the fact that none of these inventions really developed to modern standards even though they were apparently given the tools necessary to do so. Regardless, people still use this as one of the main pieces of evidence that time travel is a possibility. Number 9 is celebrity time travelers. Alright, this one's a bit ridiculous. I mean, most of you probably think this is all a bit ridiculous, but this one definitely exceeds the level of far-fetched that we are currently on. This theory suggests that certain celebrities have the ability to time travel and occasionally utilize this ability. Many people believe that celebrities and people of power know things that we don't know, but this might be pushing it a bit. However, the evidence put forth is kind of worth looking at. It pretty much all comes from pictures that were taken decades ago but show people in them that resemble modern day celebrities. These include our main man Nicolas Cage, Eddie Murphy, Justin Timberlake, Jennifer Lawrence, and Daniel Radcliffe, even though I'm pretty sure that's an old lady. The main argument to be had here is the sheer volume of images that show apparent celebrity time travelers. However, none of them are wearing clothes you think they would actually own, and most of the people in the older pictures do look like they fit the time that they're in. While it is a pretty ludicrous theory, it is fun to have a look at some of these older celebrity doppelgangers. Number 10 is Andrew BASIAGO. In the last edition of this list, we talked about a video where a man showed a picture of some kind of a riot taking place which seemed to be revolved around time travel. He stated that it would happen in 2016. This of course did not happen, however the man featured on some of these posters is a real person and he actually has quite a bit to do with time travel. Andrew BASIAGO is a lawyer from Seattle who claims that he time traveled as a part of a project known as Project Pegasus, a project that he now apparently runs. It's recommended that you take his words with a grain of salt, as he also claimed to have traveled to Mars with the young Barack Obama. In the most basic sense of BASIAGO's claims, he's essentially saying that the government know more than you think, which isn't too hard to believe, but his claims don't just stretch to time travel and teleportation. He also states that sometime between this year and 2028, he will be elected as the president or become the vice president of the United States. He's even launched an independent campaign and will actually be running for president in 2020. If he does get any kind of power, maybe he'll be able to show us more definitive evidence, but for now, his claims aren't being taken too seriously. And that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you want content similar to this on a weekly basis, and you can click one of these boxes if you want to see another video, or if you want to be taken to a playlist of all of the episodes of Caught on Tape that I have made. But like I said, that's all for now. As always, until next time.